You are worthy.
What madness is this? I will choose oblivion over this existence.
Use your hatred to weave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my soul Reaver, my angel of death.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Legacy of Kain Retrospective series. So at first I was thinking about making one video for Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 combined, but in the process of doing the research for this I decided it'd be better for me to just do a video for each. So I'm hoping you guys out there will appreciate that and enjoy these next videos as much as I did while making and researching for these videos. So let's just dive in. And so yeah, what we're talking about today is the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. It's the second game in the Legacy of Kain series, and by far the game most people look back at as being the game that got them into the series in the first place, and I must admit that it's also the game that got me into the franchise as well. And I mean, who can blame any of us though? Have you seen the intro for this game? I mean, wow, it's fucking amazing. Not to mention the music, just 2 words. Ozar Midarashi. Now I know I probably butchered that, so I apologize to anyone out there screaming at the screen right now, being like, dude, that's not how you pronounce it. You're probably right, but it's still an incredible masterpiece of a song nonetheless. This game also marks a slight tonal shift for the series going forward, because this was the first one that was actually mostly written and directed by Amy Hennig. And so they took over basically the creative process for this game. They took it from Silicon Knights. And when we get into the production part of the video, I'm going to go over all of that. It's very interesting. I actually found out a bunch of things I did not even know, so please stick around for that. That'll be coming up pretty soon here. This part right here, I just wanted to give like a quick intro. I wanted to fix a couple mistakes I made from the last video, so shout out to Brad Ramses. He accurately corrected me on one thing that I missed, and that is you actually see the whole bat transformation thing with Kain in Blood Omen 2. It does make an appearance there, and there is also, I guess it's like a slight appearance of the nobleman form from Blood Omen 1. It does actually make another appearance in Blood Omen 2, and it's just supposed to be like an Easter egg. So shout out Brad Ramses, you were right, and thank you for making the corrections for me. And again, if anybody out there finds anything in this video that I'm wrong about, please feel free to inform me. I'm not one of those guys that's going to be like, oh, I hate you because you corrected me, because I am a huge fan of the series and I love learning new things about the series, which is why when I read about the lawsuit between Silicon Knights and Crystal Dynamics, I was so enamored with it. And so just one more quick thing. It turns out that in the video before this, the one that preceded this one, my retrospective series look at Blood Omen, I actually mentioned the whole thing about the Soul Reaver twice. I didn't even realize that until I went back and listened to that video much later on. So I apologize about that. I should have caught that when I was doing editing for the video, but I didn't. I'm not one of those people that really likes to hear their voice, so every time I do this, I just go through, I make the recordings, and then I start editing after I do all the voice work, and I didn't even realize that. So, but with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get this video started. Alright, so production and development. So real quick, before we get into all the little nuances of the whole story of production, I'm going to go over cut content, things like that as well. We need to talk about the lawsuit between Silicon Knights and Crystal Dynamics. And this is going to be pretty important because this game going forward is no longer going to be helmed by Dennis Dyack. It's going to be completely Amy Hennig. And so I've heard conflicting stories about the lawsuit that happened. And so what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to tell you the 3 different stories real quick that I have heard. And then I'm going to give you basically my speculation, which it's only speculation, but my speculation of what I think probably really happened here. Because obviously, due to it being a lawsuit, they're under a non-disclosure agreement. So we'll probably never know the exact story of why that lawsuit happened and why it ended the way that it did, but I'm going to go ahead and at least try to give you guys a basic understanding and assumption of why that case went down and exactly what the results of it were. So the most common story that you will hear is that Crystal Dynamics felt like they should own the rights to Legacy of Kain because they were the ones who published. They didn't develop, they just published the first game. And Silicon Knights believed that they should own the intellectual property because they're the ones who actually developed the first game. So that's the first story, and the whole outcome with that, with what people see, is basically they feel like Silicon Knights was trying to bleed money out of Crystal Dynamics, but you gotta understand something here. It's really murky water when you talk about publishing rights and things like that, and IPs, like who owns an intellectual property and who doesn't. Because if we want to be honest here, Dennis Dyack is the one who created the Legacy of Kain franchise. But if you remember what I was talking about in the video that preceded this one, then you would remember that at some point during development, Crystal Dynamics had to send them more people, more developers, including Amy Hennig herself, to actually finish the original Blood Omen. So it's really kind of like he said, she said, right? Well, let's go on to the second story. So the second one is that there was basically a partnership between Crystal Dynamics and Silicon Knights, and then Eidos bought Crystal Dynamics, and then Silicon Knights didn't like Eidos, so they wanted out of the company and they wanted out of their contract. And to be 100% honest, this one sounds the most plausible to me, especially since, I like to look at all these legal cases that are happening and stuff, like especially right now with the whole Epic and Apple thing. But so the third story is basically that Silicon Knights, like, they actually wanted to pretty much retain all of the rights so that they can make their own game again, because again, they were trying to make Blood Omen 2, not the Blood Omen 2 that we know, but like a Legacy of Kain Blood Omen 2, because they were having some financial hardships in their own right. So those are the three stories that you could usually find pretty commonly on the internet. Personally, what I think really happened here, and again, this is speculation, guys, but it's what makes the most sense to me, is 2 Human was in development for almost a decade. It had many problems. It was in development hell. And I really feel like Crystal Dynamics, and Dennis Dyack has alluded to this in interviews, but I think Silicon Knights basically went to Crystal Dynamics and said, hey guys, we need help because we're really far behind on 2 Human, but we really want to capitalize on this whole Legacy of Kain thing because it was kind of a sleeper hit that no one was really expecting. So Crystal Dynamics, they ended up getting bought by Eidos, and they said, hey, it's cool, we'll go ahead and do it. You know, Eidos gave us the green light, we'll go ahead, we'll help you out. We will go ahead and make Legacy of Kain 2 for you, basically, but we have a few changes that we want to implement. And then Silicon Knights just basically got cold feet and decided, nah, you know what, screw this, we're going to be the ones to actually make Legacy of Kain Blood Omen 2, and decided to sue them when Eidos came back and was like, no, we own the property, so we're going to do what we want to do. No, we don't care if you don't want to make Soul Reaver, because we're going to make it. And so then Silicon Knights is like, dude, Eidos, why should I listen to you guys? And basically what was going on was Eidos, because they bought Crystal Dynamics, they pretty much bought all the properties that they had previously owned, one of which was Legacy of Kain. So that is how this whole lawsuit, or at least how I feel this lawsuit, came about after doing all the research that I did to try to figure out exactly what had been going on. So the lawsuit, it ended up getting settled out of court, and Eidos retained the rights to Legacy of Kain, and then they were finally able to publish the game, and it ended up being released in August of 1999. So that's just everything you need to know about the court case thing that happened. Some of you guys might actually have found that pretty interesting because it's something that's kind of vague out there. People don't really get why any of that really happened. And that, like I said, that's my speculation, but that's the best that I could find. That's the best answer that I could really give you guys. So we're going to go on to the actual development of the game. So this game, when it started life, it was actually a game called Shifter. And Shifter was a game that was being developed by Crystal Dynamics. And there's still a lot of carryover, actually, in Soul Reaver from the original Shifter concept. Because the original concept for Shifter was basically you would be playing as a fallen angel. And I don't know if many people realize this. If you're listening to this, you probably do. But a lot of the names of the vampires in Soul Reaver are actually a carryover from the Shifter game, because it was going to be a bunch of names that were like angelic names, like Raziel is the name of an angel. And so that is actually why the vampires in Soul Reaver, including Raziel, have those angelic names. And the whole Shifter thing came from, basically you were going to be able to shift between an angelic world and like a demon world. And that is where the whole concept of the spectral realm and the material realm came from in Soul Reaver. And so let's talk about how it ended up becoming Soul Reaver. Like I was saying a little bit earlier, Silicon Knights, they were having a lot of issues with 2 Human. Like the game, like I said, was just in development hell. So they basically said, hey, Crystal Dynamics, why don't you guys go ahead and at least get the ball rolling so that we have something going on, because we just do not have time to work on this game, because right now we really need to work on 2 Human. We need to get that game out the door. And so Crystal Dynamics were like, cool. Amy Hennig was chosen to head the project because she was actually one of the writers, one of the developers on Blood Omen. already had experience in the whole Legacy of Kain franchise, considering all the work that she had already done for the series. So they basically just were like, hey, here, you can do this, we trust you, go ahead and take care of this. So they got started on the project, and what they did was they basically took their research notes from Silicon Knights to begin creating the lore for this game, which was a major sticking point in the lawsuit that occurred between the two companies, because that was pretty much Silicon Knights, like their main argument was that, look, you did this game and you based it off our research. But research doesn't dictate ownership of a game, obviously, which is kind of why it didn't really help their case much. But yeah, so that's pretty much how that came about. And so once development got into full swing, they quickly realized that they needed to up the scope of the game, because the Shifter game wasn't actually really that big of a game when they first started working on it. So Crystal Dynamics felt like it needed to have a bigger story, bigger scope, all of that, right? Better environments, better atmosphere. So they basically started to take some time to pretty much scrap everything from Shifter so that they can make a bigger world. One thing that's cool about this game is, if you go back and play it now, you'll notice that there actually is no load screens, which is probably like a direct answer to the whole argument that was going on with Blood Omen, where the loading screens were way too long, so they got rid of them in this game. Also, Amy Hennig, she's actually been quoted in interviews saying that she wanted this game to basically represent the difference between Zelda: Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, and that's kind of why they decided to go into the 3D realm. They kind of designed it to be pretty close to Tomb Raider. This game, it was made in the Gex engine, which it's an okay engine and all, but it's not the best. So about halfway through development of the game, unfortunately that lawsuit happened, and they basically filed an injunction, Silicon Knights that is, to stop Crystal Dynamics to actually promote the game, which also meant that they had to stop developing the game. You see, this game was supposed to come out in October of 98. Yeah, that's what it is. October of 98. It did not even come out until August of 1999. So the game started going into like this weird production cycle where they would start on the game, and then it looked like the court case was going to be done soon, so they would continue on the game, and then they'd have to stop again because the court case didn't get resolved or anything. And basically it was just a big clusterfuck pretty much. So by the time they were finally done with the court case, Crystal Dynamics, they were pretty much really far behind, and they quickly realized that there was no way that they were going to have enough time to include everything that they wanted to in this game. So what they did was they basically took Soul Reaver and split the plot up into two games, which is why the end of this game, it just kind of ends abruptly, pretty much a cliffhanger ending, and that's all because they just didn't have time to finish designing the game. There's even like character models and things like that within the game files that you can find, if you go in there and look for them, but you can't access them in the game. And the reason why they're there is because they were worried that if they took that stuff out, that it was going to cause unforeseen glitches that they didn't know about. So they just left it in there and decided to just keep pushing forward. There was a lot of stuff that they actually cut. The final area was supposed to be, at one point in this game, there's like this warehouse looking place, and you're supposed to be able to turn on one of like the vents, and then like smoke starts rising from it, and then you actually would have used your wings to glide up there to get to the last portion of the game. You were supposed to fight Kain a third time there, but it never happened because, like I just said, they knew that they just didn't have time to complete the game. And it's unfortunate too because, for example, Terrio, like we never fight that guy. Like we were supposed to. There's even a character model of him in the game files, but we never actually get to fight him. There's even dialogue in there. Like, they even recorded the dialogue, and we never really got to hear it because of that. And I mean, you should see some of the things that are in the files. For example, at one point you were actually going to basically eat Ariel's soul, Ariel from the first Soul Reaver, and then that was going to give you the ability to finally beat Kain, because originally you were basically going to get your ass beat by Kain 2 times in a row, and it would seem like you stand absolutely no chance against Kain. So you would eventually go back to the pillars, and then you would get Ariel's soul that would go into the Soul Reaver, and it would give you enough power to actually be able to defeat Kain, which I have to admit is kind of a bummer, only because the Soul Reaver that Raziel would have gotten from beating Kain, it has like 2 different colors on it. I think it's red and blue that are basically swirling around the Soul Reaver, and it's supposed to make you like hella powerful. I don't know why you'd really need that unless it was just like a new game plus thing, because I mean, obviously after you beat Kain, then you're done, right? The game's over. It's not like you're gonna fight Kain again, at least not in this game. But the moral of the story here is that they had to cut a huge chunk out of the game because they just didn't have enough time to finish all the development that the game would have needed for them to be able to fit everything in there that they had wanted. And it's probably for the better, simply because they were able to change the story and basically fix some of the things, because they were gonna kill Kain in this game. Like, this was pretty much gonna be the end in Soul Reaver. Like, that at the end you were gonna kill Kain, and that was gonna be it. There was not gonna be a part 3. There wasn't gonna be a Blood Omen 2. There wasn't gonna be a Defiance. Nothing. It just would have ended after this game right here. So let's go into some of the cut content. Actually, I'm going to show you some of this stuff, because some of this stuff is actually pretty cool. The first thing I want to point out is up on the screen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys a picture of the map. It's basically the world map for Soul Reaver, and you can see it actually is pretty big. But check this out. Look how big it was going to be before they actually made the cuts. Yeah, you see that? Isn't that crazy? Like, it feels like they cut out almost half the game. They were really ambitious in the scope of this project. Like, they really wanted to make something special with this game. They just ran out of time. It's rather unfortunate, because I mean, you know, their big inspiration was Zelda. So could you imagine like how much better this would have been if they had actually kept that stuff in there, except for the killing Kain part. I would have liked it if they kept more areas in there, but they didn't kill Kain. Only because, you know, obviously I love the rest of the series, and my personal favorite is actually Soul Reaver 2. So if we never got Soul Reaver 2, probably wouldn't even be that big of a fan of this series. But yeah, so let's move on. I'm going to show you guys a couple areas here real quick. And the first one is going to actually be, I'm going to show you guys Kain's Mountain Retreat. This was going to be pretty much the final area of the game. It's where you were going to fight Kain for the 3rd time and eventually kill him. And this is, I guess this is pretty much my own head canon, but I like to believe that Kain's Mountain Retreat is actually just a refurbished Nupraptor's Retreat. I don't know, just something about that sounds cool to me. I think it'd be super cool if Kain actually moved into Nupraptor's Retreat, and that's why he has that there. I mean, because like I was saying in the first video, he has that skull. Nupraptor has that skull where you can look into the future and you can look into the past. And I probably should have saved this for the theories part of the video, but it just makes sense to me. Like, if that is what that skull is actually for, then wouldn't it make way more sense why Kain seems to know like all of this shit that's going on, all of these different timelines, all these different possibilities? Wouldn't it make more sense if he had access to something like that, and that's how he knows about this stuff? Because it's something that they never really even touched upon in the game. We never found out how Kain seems to know all of this shit that's supposed to happen. It's just kind of hanging. Like, they never really picked it up or really even explained it. So, yeah, like I said, that's just kind of my headcanon on that subject. But let's talk a little bit more about Kain's Mountain Retreat. So, what was originally planned is you basically would have fought your way through the Silent Citadel and eventually made your way to Tyrael. And after you defeated him, you would have gained access to Tyrael's smokestack, which is, it's just a big chimney that you would have jumped into that would have given you enough lift to actually make it into Kain's Mountain Retreat. That also would have been where you fought Kain for the last time in the game. And you can actually see, and I'll show this to you a little later, but you can actually see like places where there's supports for Kain's Mountain Retreat actually in Tyrael's territory, the Silent Citadel. And there's all kinds of things in there. It's actually kind of interesting because if you watched the last video, you might have remembered me talking about Kain's armor. Well, there's actually one part in this where there would have been like spots for Kain's armor. So they actually would have had Kain's armor like displayed up in Kain's Mountain Retreat, but unfortunately we didn't get that because it was cut from the game. The next area I want to talk about is actually called the Undercity or the Undercroft, either or. If you've been following this franchise, you probably know that at one point there was supposed to be priestesses in the game that we never got to see. Well, if you've ever wondered where they were going to be, it's here. They actually would have been in the Undercroft. And the way you were going to get there was basically in the human citadel. There was going to be an area where you could basically swim down beneath the water into some pipes, and then you would access the Undercroft by actually going into the pipes and then swimming your way up and into there. And there's actually still some assets left over. By the way, guys, all this stuff is from the Lost Worlds. The Lost Worlds is a YouTube channel for Soul Reaver, so if you like this, and I'm not going to describe everything, go to their channel, and actually you can find out way more if you go over there. And it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of the franchise. So, but back to the Undercroft. It was going to pretty much be kind of almost a water temple. So I'm happy they didn't include this because it looks pretty complicated. There was going to be different switches on different levels. You were going to raise the water up to 3 different levels, and you were going to have to basically use that to solve puzzles, more block puzzles, which yay, I guess, block puzzles are awesome because that seems to be what the developers think. But once you got to the top, you would have eventually met the Grand Priestess and had a boss battle with her. I'm sure Raziel would be able to handle it pretty easily. But yeah, so that's the Undercroft. That's where the priestesses were going to be. And let's move on. So in the original version of the game, after you fight Dumas, you would head east to find the Oracle's Cave. But originally, before that actually wasn't going to be the Oracle's Cave, it was going to be Tyrael's territory, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Like I said, you would have gone east to get to Tyrael's territory, and it was actually the section of the game that was the biggest that was cut. So it really sucks that they had to get rid of this because, like I was saying earlier, they had Tyrael already made. They had the voice actor already do all the voice work. So it would have been really cool to actually be able to see all of this. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. This is also where Tyrael's smokestack would be the one that would help us get up to Kain's Mountains Retreat that we never got to go to either. And basically this was going to be kind of like a lava themed territory right here. And there would have been 2 different kinds of lava. There would have been one that just hurts you, and then one that would just kill you instantly. Also, the puzzle in this area would actually have not included blocks. I know, blasphemy. But yeah, it would have been a fan. It wouldn't have been a block puzzle, it would have been a fan puzzle. One thing that I'm kind of sad about in terms of this area is if you're watching and following along, you can see what Tyrael's offspring would have looked like. And I actually think that's one of the better looking enemies in the game. So it really is rather unfortunate that we didn't get into this area. Also in this game, you were eventually supposed to get possession, which would have been making a comeback from Blood Omen. And this is the only area in the game where there's animations for you to actually use the possession spell. So it's widely assumed that you either would have gotten possession here, or at least would have gotten it right before you got here, because there's the one area where you can actually use the spell to get one of Tyrion's offspring to pull a lever so that you can cross a bridge to continue up the smokestack. So after you cross the bridge, you would actually drop down a ledge right after that bridge, and you would encounter Tyrell. And here is where you would actually fight him. I'm about to show you guys. Are you ready? You guys want to see what Tyrell's character model looked like? There it is. Like, I don't know about anyone else, but it looks disturbing to me. I don't know why, but for some reason when I look at this character model, I'm just like, dude, no. Like, it's just freaky as hell to me. I don't know, maybe I'm just a pussy, but seriously, it's disturbing to me. And the way you would have killed him was you were going to basically break some pillars above him to empty out all the water. One more thing I want to mention real quick. If you see all this stuff that's floating around, you might be thinking that's snow or like the game's glitching. No, that's ash, which is a nice little touch to this area that they put in there. They actually have the ash floating around like that. That's pretty cool. And then once you had defeated Tyrell, you would have gotten an ability that was also cut from the game, which was an amplified force ball, basically. And I'm gonna show you guys that right now. There you go. And that's just, something else that was cut from the game that we never got to see. Let's move on to cut Reavers. And the first one that we have is actually going to be the Sunlight Reaver. And it works pretty much the exact same way that the Fire Reaver works. They actually have it animated in the game, and you can even use the abilities if you know how to basically hack the ROM. One interesting thing about this forge is it's one of the only forges that actually has its own color scheme in the spiritual realm, or the spectral realm. And I mean, it's pretty creepy. After that, we have the Water Reaver, which you would have gotten in the exact same place that you got the Fire Reaver after fighting Rahab. And that's pretty much all that we really know about it. It doesn't even change colors. There's no animations left. All that we really know is that if after you beat Rahab, you would have found the Water Reaver as opposed to the Fire Reaver. I was thinking about this the other day, but I was like, why would they make a Water Reaver? I'm like, I feel like it wouldn't do anything, right? But then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? The fucking vampires, like, they die when they touch water. So it actually does kind of make sense that there would be a Water Reaver, only because it'd probably be really easy for Raziel to actually kill like fledgling vampires, considering the fact that it's like acid to them, right? So the next one is actually the Sound Reaver. You can see in this video right here, like, the forge is not completed at all. There's no textures or anything. One interesting thing about this, though, is there's these weird random bells kind of scattered throughout the land of Nosgoth, and we never really figured out what the hell those are for. It turns out those were actually for the Sound Reaver. It was going to be like those areas where you can change, the element of whatever Reaver you happen to be using, like you can in the normal game. And that's what those bells were originally made for, was actually for the Sound Reaver. After that, we have the Stone Reaver. Now, it's probably a good thing that they actually got rid of the Stone Reaver, because it was extremely overpowered. I mean, it was like a one-hit kill Reaver, which is probably why they got rid of it. That's just makes the game way too easy. And you would have gotten it after defeating Dumas, and then basically you would have gone up. There would have been this gate that you could open up with the Constrict ability, and you would have used it on the key, and then would have opened up and would have sent you over to the Stone Forge, and then you would have got the Stone Reaver. So the last of the cut Reavers that they ever made any progress on was actually the Spirit Reaver. Now, if you guys go to the Lost Worlds YouTube channel, again, shout out to Lost Worlds. Their channel is awesome. They are the ones who provided all of this cut content footage. They say that they don't know exactly what the Spirit Reaver was supposed to be. They just know it's in there. Personally, I think it actually would have been after you killed Ariel. because there was the whole rumor, right, that part of the cut story to this game was that you were going to have to kill Ariel, and then when you did, you were going to get her soul, and then when you did, it was going to enhance the Reaver, and then that was going to be how you eventually killed Kain. And I feel one point to this that really proves that is, it was always a rumor that that Reaver was going to be the black and red Reaver, which is exactly what these guys found inside of the cut content. So that's what I really think the Spirit Reaver was. I could be wrong, obviously. Again, speculation. But that's what I legitimately think the Spirit Reaver was actually for. There was also one more Reaver that there is nothing, like there's no proof of it, but there's rumors of it, like there's no physical evidence, so I can't show you a video or anything of it. And that is the Reaver that you should have gotten after defeating Kain, which was rumored to be blue and red, and that basically would look like the black and red Reaver, but in the middle would be blue. Obviously that never came to pass because you never kill Kain in this game, thank God, because then that would have killed the whole franchise right then and there. But you know, that's the only other piece of cut content that I really want to mention. So there is way more stuff. If you guys are really interested, then please visit the Legacy of Kain Lost Worlds YouTube channel. Their channel is awesome. And yeah, you know, give them a like, subscribe, and tell them that I sent you. So from there, we're going to move on to the gameplay. That's pretty much all I really have to say about production and development and about the cut content. So let's just move on to the gameplay. Okay, so we finally hit the gameplay part of the video. And gameplay can best be described in just 2 words, and those 2 words would actually be block puzzles. Okay, no, so I'm just messing with you guys, but in all seriousness, this has been the part that I've been dreading having to do since I even started this whole retrospective series, because I already knew that this was going to be kind of divisive. I might as well just be honest, I fucking hate the gameplay of Soul Reaver. My personal opinion in terms of gameplay, this one is by far the worst game in the whole series in terms of gameplay. It's just, it's boring. No, real quick, before we even get into that, everybody, I want you to know I love this franchise, I really do, and it's gonna sound like I'm bitching probably for the next 30 minutes at least, but there's no way for me to avoid it. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and try to kiss ass. I have to be honest about it, and so I cannot stand the way that this game plays. I mean, I was playing through it again recently because I did a playthrough just to refresh my memory before I started making this video, and man, I was getting so pissed off. I was getting so frustrated. Like, the camera in this game is just, it's horrendous, and you can really tell that this game is running on the Gex engine, because this game is not a platformer, not really, you know, and that engine is made really more for platformers. And yeah, I guess in a way this game is kind of a platformer, but it's just like block puzzle after block puzzle after block puzzle after block puzzle, you know, and the combat, it's just clunky. It's hard to kill anything. And I mean, and there's times in the game where enemies just glitch out. Like, for example, they have the the vampires that look like spiders. If you jump up on something and you stand there on the edge, they'll be stuck, and they'll be forever trapped. They basically start to T-pose when you do that to them, and they just sit there and they don't move because the computer doesn't understand what is going on. You know, because you are blocking their path, it like breaks the game. You know, and there's just so many moments in this game like that. You know, and I hate to say it, because then and every time you play it, you have to figure out all the puzzles, you have to keep switching between the material realm and the spectral realm. And I mean, no, that it's not terrible, but there's just no reason for us to have to keep doing that so much. They did it so much better in the other games. than they did in this game. And I know it's because, it was really kind of the early days of 3D gaming, but it's just annoying as fuck. It is the most annoying out of the series, and I really don't want to be sitting here ranting about it, but I feel like I really have no choice. I've been procrastinating on doing this section for like 2 weeks, just because I didn't want to have to sit here and just bitch for the next 30 minutes. And unfortunately, that looks like that's what's gonna happen. Man, like, there's no reason for you to even engage in combat in this game. You get the Soul Reaver, right? Once you hit that part of the game, there's really no reason for you to fight any of the vampires. Because as soon as you get hit, what happens? You lose your ability to use the Soul Reaver, and now you just have to hope that you can find something to be able to kill the fledglings. And if there's nothing like that in the environment, wherever it is that you might be, which actually does happen from time to time, you're just fucked. And there's nothing you can do about it, except go into the spectral realm, again, to like absorb one of those souls, because the Slaw, right, those are those goblin looking things in the spectral realm. What they are is they're fallen vampires. They're vampires that have died and they became wraiths. And that's part of the reason why the Elder God wants Raziel around, is because, do you remember the part where the Elder God was saying that vampires are like a scourge on the wheel of life? And I'm trying to remember the way that he said it. He said that like they rot in their bodies, and their souls are unable to escape. That's the whole reason that Elder God like wants Raziel around, because then he wants Raziel to collect all those Slaw that are inside of the spectral realm. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but yeah, so I just call him the Slaw. And we'll get into more about the Elder God when we get to the theory part. But yeah, man, it's, you gotta jump through water, you gotta go in and out of the spectral realm way too much. And then once you finally beat something, right, once you finally make it through a room, you're greeted with more fucking block puzzles. I remember there's this one part in particular where you have to go through 3 different gates. No, wait, you know what? Back up a little bit. So first, before you even get to those 3 gates, you have to do a block puzzle to lower down these 2 like bridge looking levers. And then once you do that, you gain access to a different area in that map. And then when you get to that area in that map, you have to do 3 more rooms of block puzzles. And then once that happens, it unlocks like the little sound bell that you hit, and it breaks the windows. And then once you finish that, you have to go and do another fucking block puzzle. And the whole time you're switching in and out of the spectral realm. And people bitch and complain about how long it takes Kain to draw in blood in Blood Omen and in Blood Omen 2, but it takes Raziel the exact same amount of time for him to switch in and out of the spectral realm. Back then when this game was made, I give him props. I do. But going back and playing it now, after all the modern games that we are used to, I just don't have the patience for it anymore. It takes like 5.6 seconds, right, to go in and out of the spectral realm. And again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're going in and out of the spectral realm over and over and over and over again, it really starts to add up. You probably spend a good 20 to 25% of this game just switching in and out of the spectral realm. Seriously, guys. I mean, again, like I hate to sound like an asshole, but it's the truth. It's the God's honest truth. And you don't even really get any real cool abilities. And we'll get into that in a minute. I'm gonna go ahead. I'll go over all the Soul Reaver augments that we get and all that, but man, it's so repetitive. And I know this is going off topic just a little bit here, but in this game, right, like you fight all these bosses. Have you ever wondered why there's not as many bosses in Soul Reaver 2 as there is in Soul Reaver 1? It's because they didn't know they were going to make a Soul Reaver 2. So you pretty much kill all the vampires that could have been bosses in this game, in part 1. Because, again, they didn't know if there was going to be a part 2 or not. But it's just, they just kind of blew their load right on the first game. And it just sucks, because even those boss battles aren't very satisfying. Like, especially that one with the, I can't remember his name right now, but basically you jump, you pull a lever, and then the gate closes on him. And then eventually you get up to the part where there's like the circle there. And you pull another lever, and then like a meat grinder looking thing comes down. Like, that's a puzzle boss. I hate to use that phrase because Darkside Phil says that shit. But it is. It's a puzzle boss. Like, you can't really hurt it. And it's not like you could, if you wanted to, you could just fight the thing, which would have given the game a little bit more replay value. Because then that way you could, try to kill it a different way the next time you fought it, which would be cool. And another thing, experience. Like, there's no experience in this game. It's not like you can just keep fighting and then, you'll get better and better at it. Like, that's not how this game works. So again, it's like, why the fuck would I even want to engage in combat in this game? The only reward for engaging in combat in this game is to reacquire the Soul Reaver. But if you never lose the Soul Reaver in the first place, then why should you fight anything? I just don't understand. It's just crazy. I just really don't understand what they were thinking. How do playtesters sit here and play this game, when they're testing the game before it gets released, and being like, oh yeah, the game's fun. This reminds me of another story. The guy that played the Elder God, I remember, like, he said in an interview that he didn't like playing the game. He said he liked the story, but he didn't like playing the game. But I guess it was his 6-year-old or maybe 10-year-old son or whatever, grandson, actually, was playing the game, and he really liked it gameplay-wise. And I guess he asked the grandpa to play, the voice actor of the Elder God, that is, and he was stuck on one room for almost an hour and a half. Because he could not figure out the whole spectral realm thing. And maybe I'm just stupid, but I guarantee there's a lot of people out there who had this exact same problem, which is exactly why this game is, it was successful, but it was more of a cult classic. And let's be honest, guys, like, this game is so great because of the story, right? Thank God for the story. Thank God for the story of this game, because if that wasn't here, then after this game, I would not be surprised if it bombed. If this was a bad story in this game, it probably would have bombed. But back to the Soul Reaver. So, seriously, like, why? Why even engage in combat? And then, the slow, I was just talking about the slow. Again, those are the goblin things inside of the spectral realm. They have, like, this weird light on their back, where if they're green, basically, if it's flashing green, that means they're at full health, and it goes all the way down to red. And then once they hit red, they turn around and they start running from you. And because you can only run as fast as they can, and because the camera angles are so bad, like, it takes you forever sometimes to catch up to that motherfucker. And by then, you're like, man, fuck it. Like, I'll move on to something else, because I don't want to sit here and have to keep chasing these guys. I'm like, dude, die like a man, you fucking pussies. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, it makes no sense. It makes no fucking sense. Like, they're over there trying to kill you, right? And instead of you, just being able to kill them, they start running away because they're like, oh man, I'm gonna die. Like, you shouldn't have fucked with Raziel in the first place. He's like the Grim Reaper. What were you thinking? Why would you even mess with Raziel in the first place? And another thing, there's no real, like, dedicated dodge button in this game, which was something they added to Soul Reaver 2, man. Thank God they did that, because it was a lifesaver. Made the game way, way better to play. If it wasn't for that dodge mechanic in Soul Reaver 2, it might not have been that good either. And so, like, for those of you who are watching the video and not just, like, listening to it, like at work, or if it was a podcast or something, which is totally fine. I do that all the time. That's why I've been making these videos so long, because I like to do that. I like to listen to this kind of stuff while I'm working. But if you're watching, do you see how long it's taken me to climb up this pillar? And it's because of the fucking camera. It's the camera, everything. When you run, it reminds me of Oblivion. It's more like you're ice skating, across the world, as opposed to actually taking like real steps. And again, if you're watching this, I fell like 5 or 6 times. Just kept falling over and over and over and over again. Man, I wanted to rage quit so many times when I was going through this playthrough. In fact, I kind of wish I didn't even do this new playthrough, because it kind of made me lose a little bit of respect in terms of the gameplay for this game. Almost like I had rose-tinted glasses on or something like that, because I could have sworn to God it was a fun game. Now, I could have sworn to God I remember having a good time. Maybe it's just because I'm playing on PC now, as opposed to actually playing like on a real Dreamcast. Maybe that's what's going on. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I consider Dreamcast, the Dreamcast version, to be the superior version. The character models are better. You can actually clearly see Raziel's logo or symbol, whatever it's called, sigil. You can actually see it pretty well. And so again, I just feel like that one it's the better version. It just looks better, it runs better, it plays better. So maybe that's what's going on. Maybe if I switched back to Dreamcast, I wouldn't be having this many issues. But I feel like I shouldn't be having this many issues in the first place. It reminds me of the camera from Super Mario 64. But it was actually better than Super Mario 64. That's for damn sure. I just kind of wish they would have at least used a different engine. But it's not all bad. It's not all bad. There are a couple of things that I noticed with this that I didn't really notice when I was a kid. One thing in particular was I don't remember this game ever being kind of scary. And maybe I just was too young to understand, but it's not that the game is scary, but there is this really weird, creepy vibe that you get when you play this game. Go back and play this again if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But there is this rather weird, uncanny valley feeling to the game. And again, maybe that's just because of the way it's aged. I don't know. I would like to think that it was done intentionally, but we don't really know. So with that out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the abilities that you get from the Soul Reavers. From this point going forward, we're just gonna call them the Dark Gifts, because that's pretty much what they are. You have to kill a boss to get the abilities, and basically it makes Raziel stronger. And so the first one I want to talk about is the one you get after defeating Dumas. It's called Constrict. And what this does is it basically allows Raziel to harness the power of a constricting band of energy to stun enemies or rotate blocks and objects. So I guess you could say it's kind of like a Rasengan. It's only seen in this game, and you can quote me on that. I know for a fact it's only seen in this game. Now, one weird thing about it is you can use it in both the spectral and the material realm, but the really weird thing is if you successfully run around an enemy twice and then you use it, it's a guaranteed insta-kill. Now, why that is, I have no idea, but try it. It works. There are some fascinating lore tidbits about this power that I want to talk about. So let's talk about that. So, although it was originally evolved by Dumas, it's unknown when he was able to perfect this, and it's also unknown if it was before his death. See, people think that it might literally have been right before he died he figured out how to use this. And in the lore community, it's pretty much speculated that during his time as a Wraith, because at one point he was a Wraith, he was in between the realms, he learned how to harness the energy that was in the stream of life. And he was able to use that to basically kill other vampires as a weapon. And that is why Dumas has it. And the other theory about this is that it also might have actually been, it might have started as Kain's energy bolt spell from the first game. And another possibility with that is it could have been immolate. I don't even know how to say that shit right now. If you watched my first video, you know what I'm talking about. But Dumas, he would have inherited that from Kain, and then eventually evolved it to the form that we see it in Soul Reaver 1. The next dark gift that we're going to talk about is Phase. This one is easily, it probably is the most important ability that Raziel gains. And I say that because it's in every single game after this one. In fact, starting with Soul Reaver 2, it's just an ingrained ability that he always has. He never has to go and get it again, it's just one of his abilities. And the way he got this was after he defeated Melchiah. Yeah, it was Melchiah. He actually absorbed his soul. Now, I don't know if you realize this one, but Melchiah, the reason he was able to do that is his body actually existed in 2 realms at once. He was able to master the ability to exist in the material realm and in the spectral realm all at once. And that's why he's the only one who was able to evolve that, is because he was really, really good at being in, like I said, in both realms at one time, which is why he was able to phase through the gates in that big cage in the middle of the arena where you fight him in that boss battle. Now, unlike Melchiah, Raziel can only use it when he's in the spectral realm. So, surprisingly enough, man, Melchiah actually was better at something than Raziel was. But, yeah, moving on. Up next, we have the Reaver bolts. And Raziel first got this by defeating the Tomb Guardian at the Tomb of the Seraphim. Basically, he gained a telekinetic force projectile, which gave him the ability to fire like a telekinetic force projectile. That's kind of redundant. Anyways, so it also enhanced the Wraith Blade. Raziel, not only did it do that, but it also enhanced the Fire Reaver, and you can actually start firing fire bolts too, which works really good against the vampires because you can stay away from them at a distance and just fire a bunch of fire bolts at them. And yeah, it burns them, and we all know that fire works really good against the vampires of this world. And so the way it works in conjunction with the Reaver is like this: if he was at full health and he had the Reaver, then it would be a Reaver bolt. If he was below full health and the Reaver was not equipped, he would basically just fire an ordinary force bolt. And if he had the Fire Reaver, then he would fire a fire projectile. Again, I am sorry guys, I should have proofread this shit before I actually started recording. But anyways, let's go on to the next one. And the next dark gift that Raziel receives, he receives from his brother Zephon. And what this is scaling walls. That's pretty much all it is. So those spider-like vampires, the Zephonim, the ones that I was bitching about earlier, the ones that get stuck when you stand on top of them, they have that ability because of Zephon, because obviously the Zephonim are his offspring. And when you finally find Zephon, he's immobile. He can't move at all. He's basically turned into part of the structure of the Citadel. At least I think, was it the Citadel? No, it was the Cathedral. It was the Silence Cathedral. Sorry, guys. But yeah, this is also another one that's really important because it actually becomes, just a common ability that Raziel has going forward from Soul Reaver 2 all the way up into Defiance. One interesting thing to note, though, is Kain also has this ability. Why he has it is never really explained. I don't know. Maybe I'll make some crazy ass theory about it later. In fact, yeah, I'm brainstorming now. Yeah, I think I got something I could say about that. Yeah, I definitely do. Stay tuned, guys. But yeah, not only that, but they also are able to kick off of walls to reach higher platforms. Now, obviously, you can't do that in Soul Reaver, and we'll talk more about that once we get to Defiance. But yeah, so that's scaling walls. It helps out a lot. He can only do it in the material realm, and he can only do it on textured surfaces, unlike the Zephonim who can do it anywhere. Another little fun fact is when you're playing and one jumps down from out of nowhere, what's really going on is when you enter a room, look up, because a lot of the times the enemies are actually on the roof or the ceiling. They're waiting for the right chance for them to strike. Most rooms, you'll find 2 of the Zephonim, but if you look up, there's actually a third that you'd never even notice. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, the camera is so crap in this game that you can almost never look up. But give it a try. You might find something you never known was there. The next dark gift that was bestowed upon Raziel was swimming. And so he gets this from defeating Rahab, and I think it was chapter 7. Yeah, it's in the drowned abbey. So Rahab and basically his offspring have actually they've overcome the vampiric weakness to water and became aquatic creatures. And see, at first when you went into water, it would basically kill you instantly and send you right back to the spectral realm. And don't forget, guys, that in the spectral realm, water has neither heft nor lift. I'm sorry, I had to do that shit. You got the Elder God, it's like Captain Obvious, you know? But, yeah, so moving on. Oh, you know what? Might as well just mention it now. I'm saving Devouring Souls for the end of this because, believe it or not, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to the Devouring of Souls by Raziel. But back to swimming. So I wrote like a paragraph about this. Fuck it, it's swimming, guys. There's really not a lot to explain. Raziel can swim. If you really need me to explain that to you, then I feel bad for you. So yeah, long story short, Raziel can swim. It comes back in the other games as an innate ability, and eventually when you get the Earth Glyph in what is it? I think it's Defiance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Defiance. You can actually sink down to the bottom of wherever it is you're swimming, and you can kind of walk across the ground, kind of like if you had iron boots in Zelda. Which is ironic considering that people thought that this series was a Zelda clone. But anyways, we're going to move on to the next one, to the next dark gift, because it's pretty self-explanatory. Swimming is swimming. And that's it. All we have now to talk about is Devouring Souls. And before we go on to that, can you see the huge difference here between Blood Omen and Soul Reaver? I mean, man, the last video I made, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Like, comment, subscribe, please. I'm just saying, you should do it. Do it now. Come on. Alright, anyways. So, in the last video I made, man, I must have gone on for almost an hour about all of Kain's different sets of armor, his abilities, his items, his spells. He had all of this. He had a plethora of things to use in combat, and that is simply not the case here, most likely because of the graphical differences. You know, they didn't have as much memory that they could use, considering this was also a PlayStation 1 title, and so most likely that's why. But it is rather sad that they never really get back up to that level ever again in the entire franchise. But the good news is that, like I was saying a little while ago, in my opinion, the gameplay of this one is the worst. So it's all uphill from here. Like, for example, I'm really looking forward to doing the Blood Omen 2 video because I feel that one has the best boss battles in the entire series. And if you haven't played Blood Omen 2, you should give it a shot. Don't try to overanalyze the story like I'm sure I'm going to do. Because it will just give you a massive headache. It's really kind of hard to follow. Again, for the love of God, wish me luck. But in terms of the boss battles and the gameplay, Blood Omen 2 is pretty fun. So, like I was saying, let's talk about Devouring Souls. Okay, so yeah, Devouring Souls. Now, one thing I've always wondered about this is when Raziel eats a soul, does he actually devour it, or does it go to the Elder God? Because the way the Elder God talks about it, it kind of sounds more like it goes to the Elder God, which is why, you know, he wanted Raziel to begin with, was so that he could basically eat more food. So that's just something I've always felt was kind of unexplained there. Another interesting thing about it is there's actually like a hidden morality system in this game where if the first human that you see, if you don't kill him, and you just run by, then none of the other humans will even attack you later on in the game until you attack a human. But one thing you can do is you can actually sip like a small portion of their soul without killing them. And if you were to do that, you can still run by them and keep your whole, good points basically in the hidden morality system. But I just thought that was always something that was really interesting, that you could even do that to begin with. I didn't even know until recently that there even was any kind of morality system in this game. So when I found that out, I was pretty surprised. So that's pretty cool right there. And with that being said, we're gonna move on to the storyline section of the video. There was a couple other things I wanted to talk about in regards to devouring souls, and one of them we're about to bring up. The other one, I'm not even gonna bullshit you guys, I completely forgot what the hell I was gonna mention. If I remember it while I'm doing the storyline, I'll let you guys know. I know, hella unprofessional. It's all good, fuck it. So yeah, let's just start the storyline. Alright, so here we are. The storyline for Soul Reaver. Now, it's a pretty good storyline. It is. I'm not gonna say it sucks. But it is a little bit on the weaker side. Now, don't get me wrong, the intro is fucking amazing. It's hands down my personal opinion best intro to a video game of all time. And of course, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in this video so we can all watch it one more time, even though I'm sure we've all watched it at least 1,000 times by now. I don't know about you guys, but I never really get tired of seeing the intro video. It's just perfect. The intro video for this, it's like 3-4 minutes long, I think. It does more to establish the premise of the game, the settings, the ultimate goal, who the bad guy is, who the good guy is. It sets all of that shit up in like 4 minutes. It did what it took Final Fantasy VII a good 40 minutes to an hour to do in 4 minutes. I mean, what else can really be said? So, yeah, first, let's watch that.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I have served Kain a millennium. The gift continued to evolve. We became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome: my eternal damnation. Raziel was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the lake of the dead.
Cast him in.
Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Okay, so as we see, Kain decided to rule the world. And I'm sorry because I know most of you guys already know this. If you're watching this video, then you've probably already played these games and you know exactly what's going on. But I'm going to give my commentary on them anyways. So the first thing I want to say here is, when it comes to the Elder God, first of all, I really wish Tony J was still with us. He was an incredible voice actor. He was a classical Shakespearean actor before he got into the whole voice acting gig thing. And as a matter of fact, can we just take a minute here to just appreciate these voice actors? Man, these guys are so good. If this was a movie, I guarantee this would have won awards. You know it would have won awards. I mean, the dialogue in these games is just so good. I mean, this franchise single-handedly just expanded the vocabulary of so many kids. I mean, I'm not even gonna bullshit. I didn't even know what machinations meant the first time I heard it in this game. And if it wasn't for this game, there's a lot of words I probably wouldn't know. But back to the storyline. So, Raziel awakens from one of his hibernations. He acquires a new dark gift. Kain obviously is, air quotes, jealous about that, and then rips off his wings and throws him into the abyss. I've never bought that. Maybe I'm in the minority here and I understand why, if I am, but personally I think Kain did that on purpose. I do. I really think that he knew that he needed Raziel, and he needed to introduce a pawn to the game that he could control, basically. And maybe not even that. Maybe he just knew from the Chronoplast visions that Raziel was going to become something that he needed to ally himself with. I mean, Raziel is basically a walking paradox, especially once he gets the Soul Reaver. He's literally a walking paradox. He's the only character in this game that has any chance of changing the time stream. Him and him alone, and Kain knew that. In fact, I would even be willing to bet that Kain has always known that. And that is the entire reason why he ever resurrected Raziel to even begin with. I think he resurrected the other Seraphim commanders because he knew that Raziel needed to be more powerful for the journey ahead. One thing I will say though is, I have heard some people say that when Kain looks away as Raziel's getting thrown into the abyss, it looks like Kain's kind of sad. You know, like, oh boo-hoo, my friend Raziel. Honestly, I want to believe that, but it doesn't look like that to me at all. It doesn't. Best case scenario, it just looks like he's in deep thought. So, Raziel falls into the abyss, gets thrown in there, basically betrayed by his comrades, because he doesn't really know exactly what's going on at this point. Neither do we, obviously, but as he's really out of the loop. He wakes up after, I think it's 1,000 years, and the Elder God basically tells him, hey, I resurrected you, and I need you to do my bidding. I call bullshit. I do. I don't think that the Elder God resurrected Raziel. I don't think that he did that at all. I think he's full of shit. I think he's just full of shit. I think he's using Raziel to his own advantages. And I think what's really going on here is the Elder God knew that if he ate Raziel, he could create a fatal paradox and disrupt the time stream so much that it could destroy not just the world but him as well. And we all know that the Elder God is all about self-preservation. So why would he eat Raziel, knowing that he would just fuck up the time stream? Like, there's no way he would do that. Now, you might be thinking, well, if the Elder God didn't resurrect Raziel, then how is he able to eat souls? Because most people assume that the reason Raziel eats souls as opposed to blood is because the Elder God made him that way. But that's not true at all. Raziel is a wraith. Raziel is dead. He's deader than he was as a vampire. And there's even like beings like the Slaw or Slaw, whatever you want to call them, you know, those Grim Reaper looking things that are going around. Raziel is a more powerful version of those. And that's how I think Raziel came into being, is he was way more powerful than the rest of those fledgling vampires. So when he died, he didn't turn into one of the goblin looking things, he didn't turn into one of the Grim Reaper looking things. You know, he just became what he is because he was more powerful than the other wraiths. Because that's what wraiths do, they eat souls. And so plain and simple, that's how I think Raziel got his abilities. I do not think for a second, not even a second, that the Elder God did this. So fuck the Elder God.
I know you, Raziel. You are worthy.
What madness is this? What pitiful form is this that I have come to inhabit? Death would be a release next to this travesty.
You did not survive the abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
The choice is not yours.
I am destroyed.
You are reborn. The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. It is this soul that animates the corpse you lived in. And that, Raziel, is the demise of Nosgoth. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies. Redeem yourself. Or if you prefer, avenge yourself. Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again. Use your hatred to read their souls. I can make it possible. Become my soul Reaver, my angel of death.
So Emperor Palpatine, Elder God, revives Raziel, wakes him up, was more like it, you know, because, again, bullshit. The Elder God did not create Raziel. I mean, he just says, you know, go get revenge, and I don't blame Raziel for wanting revenge. What's funny is the Elder God never even tells him how long he's been dead for, you know, so that's probably about to be a huge shock to Raziel. If the voice sounds familiar, Tony J, he did the voice of Mortanius as well, who was in Blood Omen. So, most likely, only people watching this are Soul Reaver nerds like me. But if you're not, and you happen to stumble upon this somehow, that's what's going on there. If you watch the other video, it's the same voice actor. And, yeah, once again, that guy is effing amazing. But you can really, really see, like, how good the Elder God is at manipulating people. As even in the beginning right here, like, listen to that speech. I feel like he's been sitting there for 1,000 years, practicing that speech, right? Like, he's just been sitting there for 1,000 years. Okay, what am I going to say to Raziel? What can I say to this guy to get him to help me out? I need his help. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, I guarantee you, he's been practicing that shit for hella days. One thing I always thought was kind of weird is the placement of the Elder God, because it looks like he can't move, and he's supposed to be beneath the pillars, and right now he's within the abyss. And yeah, the abyss is close to the pillars, but it's sure as fuck not beneath the pillars. So it's weird. It's almost like the pillars moved. No, I'm not setting up seeds for the theories section of the video yet. Don't worry, guys. And man, like, what is with these figures in these games? Like these leader figures. Like, they always want you to kill a bunch of people. You know, first it was Ariel and Mortanius, you know, Kain, you gotta kill everybody, and now it's the Elder God. He's like, oh man, you need to kill everybody. Like, these people are a bunch of bloodthirsty fucking assholes. Like, seriously, especially like Elder God, man, that guy don't give a fuck. If it was up to him, everybody would be dead. You know, which is stupid because, you know, basically he would die, he would starve, he would just starve. You know, another point about the Elder God that I've never really understood is, where the fuck did the Elder God come from? Like, the whole reason I think he has to be some kind of elder vampire is because he doesn't create anything. All he does is leech off the wheel of life. I mean, I suppose he could be a Hilden, but I doubt it. In fact, I would be willing to guess that the Elder God is the reason that the Hilden are able to be trapped in the demon dimension in the first place. Go watch my timeline video. There's a part in that on the early history of Nosgoth where it explains that it was basically a group of like sorcerer vampires who created the pillars, and it was created as a lock and a key to keep the Hilden at bay. So I would not be surprised to find out that maybe the Elder God is one of those vampires. Maybe it was the lead vampire or something. I don't know. I didn't write the game, so I could never know, but it's the only thing that really makes sense. So moving on, I'm not going to show you guys the cutscenes where he's just basically telling you how to play the game. I might show one of those clips just because that's my favorite quote in the whole franchise in it. But then after that, we're going to move on.
You are young yet, Raziel. You still retain many of your vampiric weaknesses. Immersion in water, while not fatal, will dissolve your physical body, forcing your return to the spirit world. Be aware that in the spectral realm, water has neither heft nor lift. It stands as thin as air.
What? Heft nor a lift, guys. Don't forget.
Sanctuary of the clans reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence. And yet, I had only just emerged. In the instant between my execution and resurrection, centuries had apparently passed.
This world is wrecked with cataclysms. The earth strains to shrug off the pestilence of Kain's parasitic empire. The fate of this world was preordained in an instant by a solitary man. Unwilling to martyr himself to restore Nosgoth's balance, Kain condemned the world to the decay you see. In that moment, the unraveling began. Now it is nearly played out. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of collapse. Its fragile balance cannot hold.
And thus Raziel emerges from the Undercroft to see the ruins of the Sanctuary of the Clans. And remember, this is the first time that he has seen this place in 1,000 years. And it is just an absolute wasteland. And he's probably confused, wondering what the hell is going on, where the hell everybody is. And I can't really say that I blame him, because Nosgoth has changed a lot in that time. Things used to be much different. And if anything, this really only strengthens his resolve to know that he needs to destroy Kain. Like right now, at this moment, he feels like he has to kill Kain because of the things that he has done. Even if for no other reason that he wants revenge, he needs to get this done. He might not want to save Nosgoth, although to be fair, Raziel does seem way more righteous than Kain ever did, that's for damn sure. But for the moment, he does not possess the means to get to Kain. So Raziel has to go visit the pillars, which he does in pretty quick fashion. He gets there, then he eventually gets to the abyss, which gives him his bearings so that he kind of has an idea of where he's at. And he knows that his clan, his stronghold should be to the west, I think it was. I'll edit that if I fucked up. But anyways, he knows that it should be over there somewhere, so he decides to go basically visit the area of his clan. And when he gets there, he's horrified to find out that pretty much they're all dead. And they've probably been dead for a long time. One thing I've always kind of wondered about with this is, you know how all the vampires go through these evolutionary changes? Why doesn't Kain change at all? He looks exactly the same as he did when he threw you into the abyss. Now, he still looks exactly the same. I don't know. I just always thought that was weird. But I'm getting off topic. So Raziel sees that everybody's dead, and then he's basically told by the Elder God, hey, you need to go to Malchiah. You need to go stop Malchiah. So Raziel decides to go head that way to basically go take out his brother Malchiah. And one thing I just have to say is, Raziel, why are you listening to the Elder God? And all that? I mean, you're sitting here acting like he's your master or some shit. Kain did the exact same thing, and we all know how that turned out. It turned out that he was being used by Mobius. I just really wish... I mean, it's a video game, so plot, I'm sure that's what it is, but it'd be really cool if Raziel was just like, nah, I'm not gonna listen to you, Elder God, I'm just gonna do what I want, which he later on does, but not at first, For now, basically, he's just pretty much the Elder God's lapdog.
This, at least, had remained constant. The endlessly swirling vortex of the abyss, my tomb, and the womb of my rebirth. Though much of Nosgoth's landscape had changed, these cliffs gave me my bearings. My clan territory was to the west. I was anxious to see how my descendants had fared during the centuries of my absence. Utter desolation. My once proud kin wiped from this world like excrement from a boot. I knew the hand that wrought this deed.
No! Please!
I didn't recognize these flayed racks of flesh. Their scent was vampiric. They gnawed upon their victim's carcass like dogs.
This charnel house bore the unmistakable marks of Malchiah's clan. To what depths had our dynasty plummeted if these ghouls were the descendants of my high-born brother? Were they so debased as to recruit fledglings from the desiccated corpses here interred?
My brother Malchiah was made last, and therefore received the poorest portion of Kain's gift. Although immortal, his soul could not sustain the flesh, which retained much of its previous human frailty. This weakness, it seemed, was passed on to his offspring. Their fragile skins barely contained the underlying decay.
I just want to point out that I'm really surprised that Raziel doesn't have any kind of like PTSD by standing there right above the abyss. So I'm gonna tell you right now, man, if I was thrown into that abyss and I was trapped there for 1,000 years, I would never ever ever want to go back to the abyss again. I would do everything in my power to make sure that I never go back to the abyss. And I know this was more just like a hardware limitation at the time, but I like how the game is kind of empty. Yeah, there's a couple of enemies here and there, but the whole like empty aesthetic to the game, it really helps to drive home the fact that this is definitely a post-apocalyptic event. Although it is kind of hard to believe that Kain's empire crumbled like within 1,000 years. You would think that wouldn't happen, but what do I know? I just make YouTube videos. So after the horror that Raziel had to go through, we come to like the real horror of the game, which is block puzzles. Yes, block puzzles. Enjoy those fucking block puzzles. Fucking bitch ass block puzzles.
Show yourself, creature!
Do you not recognize me, brother? Am I so changed?
Melchiah?
Yes, brother. You should have stayed where the Master sent you, Raziel. You will find Nosgoth less pleasant than you remember.
What has become of my clan? Answer me, little brother, or I will beat an answer from your horrid lips.
Everyone is afraid, sibling. You awake to a world of fear. These times of change are so unsettling. Do you think I feel no revulsion for this form? Do you believe for a moment that our Lord would risk his empire upon an upstart inheritance?
Enough riddles. What are you saying?
You are the last to die.
Tell me, Melchiah, where can I find Kain?
The Master is beyond your reach, Raziel. He makes himself known when he sees fit, not when commanded. Unleash
Am I reduced to this? A ghoul? A fratricide?
Elevated, Raziel, not reduced. Consuming Melchiah's soul has endowed you with a new gift. Insubstantial barriers such as these are no impediment to you in the spectral realm. Will yourself to pass through, and you shall.
So after killing dozens upon dozens of Melchiah's children, he finally gets to him, and Melchiah just basically talks some shit to him. You know, tells him that, hey fam, your entire clan is dead. So haha, you know, because Melchiah is a little bitch like that. But yeah, so you know, Raziel fights him, and this is the first example of a puzzle boss in a game that I can really remember. So DSP would hate this game, definitely. But yeah, so you just jump around, you close gates on this guy. One thing I've never really understood is, like, why does Melchiah just sit there and let Raziel grind him in the mincemeat? It really doesn't make any sense to me. The only thing that I've really noticed about this cutscene is that at the end he's like released. So I'm thinking Melchiah wanted to die. I really think he just wanted to die. You know, which is kind of sad because Melchiah was actually one of the strongest vampires within Kain's army. He was one of the only ones that figured out how to fuse between the physical realm and the spectral realm, which is how we were talking about this earlier, but that's how Raziel was able to get that spell. But you know, Melchiah can do it in the physical realm. You know, he can fuse through shit in the physical realm, but Raziel can't. Like, he has to be in the spectral realm to do that shit. Which, again, I'm sure it's just a gameplay thing, and that's why it ended up being like that. But Melchiah had a lot of potential to be way more of a villain than he ended up being. I kind of wish maybe, like, they kept him around for Soul Reaver 2. And when we get to the Soul Reaver 2 video, we'll talk more about this, because they basically burned through pretty much all the bosses that could have been in that game in this game. Except for Terrell. Well, that's a whole nother story. You know, he got pulled back into the past. So by this point, Terrell's not even around. And, which is just kind of weird, because if I remember correctly, Terrell's the one who engineered the smokestacks. And for those of you who don't know what the smokestacks are for, is they pump up the smoke into the sky to help block out the sun. So that was actually a really smart thing for Kain's Empire to do, was to create that smokestack, because now they can go out freely, you know, in the middle of the day and not have to worry about being hurt, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so Raziel gains that new power and now has the ability to get into the sanctuary of the clans, where he's going to confront Kain for the first time. And so last thing I'll say about the whole thing with Melchiah is, like, I almost feel bad for Raziel, because you can totally tell that he doesn't really want to kill him, but he really didn't have much of a choice. So, you know, he had to do what he had to do.
Raziel. Kain.
The Abyss has been unkind.
I am your creation, Kain. Now, as before, you criticize your own work. What have you done with my clan, degenerate? You have no right.
What I have made, I can also destroy, child.
Damn you, Kain! You are not God! This act of genocide is unconscionable!
Conscience? You dare to speak to me of conscience? Only when you have felt the full gravity of choice should you dare question my judgment. Your life's span is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advisedness of my every deed? Can you even begin to conceive what action you would take in my position?
I would choose integrity, Kain.
Look around you, Raziel. See what has become of our empire. Witness the end of an age. The clans scattered to the corners of Nosgoth. This place has outlasted its usefulness. As have you.
The Soul Reaver, Kain's ancient blade, older than any of us and 1,000 times more deadly. The legends claimed that the blade was possessed and thrived by devouring the souls of its victims. For all our bravado, we knew what it meant when Kain drew the Soul Reaver in anger. It meant you were dead.
So it unfolds, and we are a step closer.
destinies.
I swore I saw a glint of satisfaction in Kain's eye when the Soul Reaver was destroyed. I did not understand the game that Kain was playing, but I knew the finishing move.
From this moment and ever afterward, you and this blade are inextricably bound. Soul Reaver and Reaver of Souls, your destinies are intertwined. By destroying the sword, you have liberated it from its corporeal prison and restored it to its true form, a radiant blade, its energy unbound. No longer a physical blade, it can only manifest itself in the material realm when your strength is fully restored. Once manifest, it will sustain you.
What are you, little soul? Another of Kain's creatures come to taunt this bound specter.
I did not intend to disturb your rest.
Rest. A body is needed for sleep. Flesh and bones are required to recline. No, child. All I may do is watch and remember, ceaselessly conscious as this wretched world's history unfurls. Ghastly past, insufferable future, are they one and the same? Am I always here?
How have you come to haunt these pillars?
Kain refused the sacrifice. The Pillar of Balance, corrupted to its core, stands as a monument to his blind ambition. Now these pillars serve only to bind me here, my prison and eternal home, thanks to the avarice of your master, Kain.
That bastard can claim no allegiance from me.
Then we share a common foe, Raziel. Return here when you have need. Ariel remembers what others have forgotten.
Okay, so aside from the ending of the game, that scene right there might actually be the most important scene in this entire game. And there is a lot to unpack when it comes to this scene right here. So please forgive me, guys, because this might seem a little long-winded, this part right here, but it's going to take me a minute. So the very first thing I want to point out is when you look at the pillars, something I always thought was fascinating is the other pillars, all the pillars except for the balance pillar, they're not corrupt anymore. And that is a holdover from Blood Omen, because if you guys remember, Kain actually was able to purify the other pillars. He just never purified the balance pillar. But what's weird about it is, even though those pillars have been purified, they're still been destroyed somehow. So to me, that really suggests that he himself probably destroyed those pillars, because with them being pure, they really shouldn't be toppled over like that. Now, one other thing I want to mention about the pillars, right, is they say that it reflects the person, right? Like the pillars reflect the how the person is feeling, basically, right? And so because the pillar of balance is black, that means it's corrupted. So does that mean that this Kain that we're seeing is corrupt? And if it does, then does that mean at the end of Defiance, when the balance of pillar becomes purified, that we're basically looking at a different version of Kain? And we can talk more when we get to Defiance, but I just always felt like that was something really interesting. That was something that I always like to theorize about, to think about, is this Kain that we're seeing here now, is he like straight up corrupted, or is he not? Because he becomes the hero, right? And right now it seems like he's acting, right, or it seems like he's being the bad guy, but honestly, I don't think he is really the bad guy in this game. I mean, yeah, he did some fucked up things to Raziel. I'm not gonna say he didn't, but I legitimately think he only did those messed up things to him because he had to. Because if he wanted to basically save the world, he knew that he had to do these things. And you might be thinking, how did he know that he had to do these things? Guys, he has access to all of Mobius's technology. People who are familiar with this franchise, you'll know that Mobius has the chronoplast chamber, right, where he can look into, it looks like a giant fountain, like we see it in the original Blood Omen as well. It's the fountain that the Circle members are looking into right before Vorador comes in and basically murks them all, just eats everybody in the party there. And so I have to imagine that Kain has been looking into the chronoplast visions for a while now. He has to have been going through all this stuff, because otherwise how would he know, right? Like, how would he know all of this stuff if it wasn't for that? It's the only thing that really makes logical sense, right? So the next thing I want to bring up, and guys, please correct me if someone out there is just straight smarter than me. Maybe I did not pay attention enough to the storyline, but how did he know, right? How did Kain know that the Soul Reaver was Raziel? How did he know that the Soul Reaver was going to break once he tried to hit Raziel with it? Because I feel like it's never really been explained. It's just constantly said that, Raziel, his soul is the soul that's entrapped within the Reaver. But the Reaver, and again, you guys can check on my timeline for this, that was made thousands of years in the past. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the past, the Reaver was forged. Raziel wasn't even born yet. And maybe the Dark Prophecy game would have explained all of that to us, but it was never really explained in these games. But it's just something, that I've always been like, what the fuck happened there? Like, did Kain go back into the past and somehow give Vorador the Reaver? Like, was the whole Vorador forging the Reaver thing just bullshit? Like, I mean, seriously, like, I really want to know. Like, I really, really want to know that. Because, honestly, like, if I was going to guess, I would say that maybe that's what happened. That Kain gave the Reaver to Vorador, and now it's basically like a time, not a time paradox, but it's like an infinite time loop. Like, for those of you who may have seen, like, the Flash TV show, I don't remember exactly how they explain it, but there's, like, this whole time, like, temporal distortion loop or whatever it's called, where, like, basically one event has to happen or else the other event cannot happen. So, and again, maybe we would have seen it in Dark Prophecy. Maybe that is what Dark Prophecy was going to be. Just the whole name, Dark Prophecy. Like, maybe that's what happens, or what was going to happen in that game is Kain was going to go back into the past, right, and he was going to tell Vorador all of this shit, or maybe Janos, all of this shit, right, that was going to come to pass, and then that way they could create, right, like all of the murals and stuff like that, all the prophecies that we've heard about the ancient hero, and the ancient bad guy, yada yada, and all that crap, all that good stuff that we all know about. Because at some point, something like that had to have happened, like just to keep it, like, concise, right? Like, something like that had to have happened. Because how did these ancient vampires know all this stuff was going to happen? They say that, okay, you just had like a vision or whatever. Maybe the ancient vampires are the ones who created the chronoplast visions. Maybe they're the ones who actually did that. Because it's said that the vampires in the past were these super powerful fucking sorcerers. And I'm talking about within the Hilden Vampire War era. Like, the ones that created the pillars. They're supposed to be like these crazy, super good at sorcery vampires. And I have to imagine that they're the ones that created all this stuff that Mobius has. I honestly don't think Mobius is the one who actually created all this shit. I think Mobius is just biting off the vampire technology. And how did Mobius learn about this technology? Well, he was raised by vampires. And again, you can check out the timeline. Sorry, I'm not trying to turn this into a go check out my timeline video. I'm just saying, like, a lot of this stuff I covered earlier. But I don't know, it's just something that's always seemed weird to me. And I have to imagine that the reason why it's like that is because we never got a complete story. This has to be what Dark Prophecy was about. And you know what? You know what I'm gonna do, guys? At the end of this series, once I finish Defiance, I'm gonna do a video and I'm gonna call it What If Dark Prophecy Happened? And I'm just gonna basically make like a fanfic. Screw it. Because they're not gonna do it anyways. So I might as well try to connect the dots. So enough about that. Let's talk about Ariel. Because she's here. She was there the whole time. She could have been speaking to Kain. And I wonder if after he didn't sacrifice himself, if for years Ariel was trying to get him to do the right thing, and eventually Kain was just like, I'm not gonna listen to you, bitch. You know, I let you manipulate me enough, which she did. I mean, she was the whole reason all these circle members got murdered in the first place. You know, if it wasn't for her, Kain never would have went off on his little adventure when he was just trying to not be a vampire, and then she straight lies to him and says, oh, you gotta kill all the circle members and then you won't be a vampire. So yeah, a lot of this is her fault. So she deserves to be sitting there in purgatory. And so the last thing I'll mention about this scene, because I did not mean to go off on this little mini rant, is the Elder God. This is why I think the Elder God is a vampire. Because he knew all about the Reaver. Not only do I think he's a vampire, but I think he was one of those original sorcerers. I really do. Like, that's what makes the most sense. And you might be thinking, well, why does he look like a giant squid if he was a vampire? I mean, look at all these other vampires that we're fighting in this game. You know, the older they get, the more they transform. So what's to say that he wasn't a vampire at one point, and he just transformed, he evolved, and he turned into the squid-like looking thing? I mean, it's really not that far-fetched if you think about it. It would also explain why Kain might have to go into the past if we ever did get Dark Prophecy. Maybe he had to go back into the past in that, air quotes, game that we never got. And that he had to go back to the past basically to kill the Elder God because maybe he couldn't kill him. Right, for some reason, maybe Kain tried, but he could not kill him in the future, so he decided to go back into the past. Or hell, maybe even he goes back into the past to avert everything. Maybe he thinks, okay, if I kill the Elder God when he's young, none of this shit would happen, because all this shit was set into motion by the Elder God to begin with. Because if it wasn't for the Elder God, then Mobius wouldn't have actually gone on his little tirade, you know, on his little vampire killing spree, because that's how he went crazy in the first place. Was he started getting these visions, right? He started hearing a voice in his head that he thought was God, when it was actually the Elder God. But yeah, so, sorry guys, we're gonna move on. So, Raziel gains the spectral form of the Soul Reaver, and then he's basically just told by the Elder God that he needs to go to Zephon's keep, which is the Silent Citadel, so that he can take him on, because now he has the ability to actually make it in there. So let's move on.
Once a testament to mankind's defiance of Kain's empire, this towering cathedral now stood derelict, the humans who worshipped here dead for centuries. Its architects conceived this tower as a holy weapon against the vampire menace, a colossal instrument of brass and stone. The cathedral's pipes, once tuned to blast a deadly hymn, now stood silent, and these vacant spaces whistled their impotence.
is no returning for you, Raziel.
Zephon, your visage becomes you. It's an appropriate reflection of your soul.
And you are not his handsome Raziel anymore. His precious firstborn son turned betrayer. You have missed so many changes, little Raziel. Look around you. See how the human's weapon of destruction has become my home. Indeed, my body. A cocoon of brick and granite from which to watch a pupating world.
A crevice in which to cower, only scuttling from the shadows to devour a victim already ensnared in your cowardly trap. But you've made the mistake of leaving me unbound, and it is you who must succumb to my will.
Will, instinct, reflex action. The insect mind finds little difference. I warn you, brother. As my stature has grown, so it is matched by my appetite. Step forward, morsel.
Zephon's apostate soul has bestowed on you a new gift. Like his vampire spawn, you're able to scale certain walls which are otherwise impassable, but only in the physical realm. In the spirit world, these insubstantial edifices will not support you.
And so, Raziel defeats Zephon, and that's how he gets the ability to start climbing up walls. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't have much to say about this part, because this is the part in the game that I fucking hate the most. And there's like 7 block puzzles that you gotta finish to make it through this, and then there's 2 other like wind puzzles that you have to figure out where like it makes you float, and that's how you progress in the dungeon basically. And I will say, if anything else, Zephon, he deserved that shit. He was one of the assholes that threw you into the abyss, so fuck that guy. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, but seriously, I hate this boss. I don't understand why he looks like a bug, and to be quite frank with you, I wish they had cut this part out. I really do. You know, I mean, I'm just sick and tired of the fucking block puzzles by this point. I was freaking out. I came so close to just quitting and not even playing this section because of this guy. You know, not that it's hard or anything, redundant. And I mean, let me ask you guys this. If they cut this part out of the game, what would change? Narratively, what would change? Nothing. Nothing. It's true. Like, the only thing that we needed from this place, it was the ability to climb walls. And that's it. So from here, Raziel heads to the drowned abbey to fight his brother Rahab, but he does make one interesting pit stop along the way.
Tomb of the Seraphim, once impenetrably sealed, now ravaged by Nosgoth's upheavals, its mysteries lay exposed. In the time of Vorador, centuries before Kain was made, the Seraphim warrior priests waged a merciless war against the vampire tribes of Nosgoth. Emboldened by righteousness, they committed unspeakable and indiscriminate acts of violence, massacring fledglings and ancients alike. They decimated entire bloodlines in mere decades. Now, their husks lay here, murderers enshrined.
Take heed, Raziel. A forgotten history lies within. Know thyself, though it may destroy you.
I pulled the stone free, a sigh of sepulchral air escaped the inner chamber. I was not prepared for what lay beyond this threshold. These crypts, defiled caskets of Seraphim saints, bearing my brothers' names and my own. The irony of Kain's blasphemous act rushed in on me with the crushing force of revelation. Were my hands not as bloody as these? Worse, I had spilled the blood of my brothers, these very comrades whose tombs lay ravaged before me.
Yes, Raziel, you were a Seraphim, born of the same force that all but destroyed your race. Before the dawn of the Empire, you were chosen. Kain, Nosgoth's solitary self-declared monarch, plundered this tomb and raised you from these crypts. Breathing his vampiric gift into your defiled corpses, he resurrected you as his favored sons.
So just one thing I would like to point out real quick here. I always like the symbolism of this scene, because if you look in the middle, like go back and watch that, but if you look in the middle, right there, you can actually see it looks like Raziel's health bar from the game, the spiral, is right in the middle of the Seraphim tomb. I just always thought that was a nice little detail that they threw in there. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people missed it, so go back and check that out. But yeah, so Kain decides to raise the Seraphim commanders and turn them into his vampires. Now, part of this is because, like I was saying earlier, I really think Kain knew that he needed Raziel and the Seraphim commanders. But another interesting bit to this that really isn't talked about often is somehow the process of entombing the commanders that way, the way that they did, actually preserved their souls. When you die, right, like you go to the spectral realm, we've all seen the grotesque monsters that live in the spectral realm. So the longer you're there, pretty much the more mad and feral you become, the spirit becomes. And the thing about Kain's gift is he can't turn vampires the way that like Vorador can, like the regular blood gift way. He literally has to give up a part of his soul, which will go out and seek the soul of the corpse, and then pull that soul back into the corpse. That's the only way that he can actually raise vampires. And that is actually one of the main reasons he decided that he was going to raise the Seraphim commanders, because he knew that their souls had been preserved. And what he didn't want to do was basically raise a soul that was just going to be a feral madman. And not that it would really pose much of a threat to Kain, but at the same time, if you were going to raise vampires and you were Kain, would you not, try to get the best souls possible? So therefore, he chose the Seraphim commanders. He turns them into his lieutenants. It is kind of fucked up, but at the same time, we all know, like, the way that they were in the past. We see them in Soul Reaver 2, especially Raziel. He was kind of a douchebag, when he was a human at least. To the point where, like, Wraith Raziel actually kills himself because of how douchey human Raziel was. So, just saying. But, discovering this sends Raziel, like, down this path where he feels righteous, basically, about trying to kill Kain, and he's starting to identify more with his past self. He doesn't really understand yet just what the Seraphim were, because obviously the humans look at the Seraphim as like these holy figures, but we all know that the Seraphim were not holy figures. If anything, they're worse than the vampires. And just go back to Blood Omen and look at all the like malicious attacks that the Seraphim did on the vampires. I mean, the way they were killing the vampires, all of it. Like, they were more bloodthirsty than the vampires were. Now, one thing I do question, though, about this is, how did Raziel not know this? Like, he should have remembered this. I don't know if maybe it's because they were dead for a few thousand years or something like that, where it almost was pretty much just a rebirth. You know, because when you're born, right, like, you don't remember anything before that. But the thing is like, the other vampires, like, even Kain's a great example. Like, when they're turned, they remember their past lives. So I've always thought it was kind of weird, almost a plot hole, that none of these guys knew that they were Seraphim commanders. I'm pretty sure they should probably remember that. But I'm just gonna say, you know, it's probably plot again, which is fine, because it's a cool little reveal for us, the viewer. But he really should have known that he was a Seraphim the whole time. I mean, unless Kain was somehow able to erase their memories or something, which I guess is actually kind of plausible, only because he has the whole control mind spell back in Blood Omen. I'm pretty sure it didn't erase memories though, but who knows. So we'll just say headcanon, Kain erased their memories using the mind control spell. But yeah, so with that being said, we're going to move on to the next section, which is going to be Raziel taking on Rob.
Once a sanctuary against the vampire menace, this abbey has been drowned by the deluge spilling from this wounded land. Your brother Rahab and his brood, devastated even by the feeble rays of Nosgoth's sun, overcame their vulnerability to water and retreated from the surface. Now they haunt these ruins and glide in the darkness of its stagnant depths.
Rahab, you have adapted well to your environment, for one so maladjusted.
Not me, Raziel. You of all of us should respect the power bestowed by a limitation overcome. Kain said you would come.
You speak with the murderer?
You would do well to mind your blasphemous tongue.
What more did he tell you?
That you would destroy me.
I will indeed. But tell me, before I tear your soul from its moorings, do you know what we were before Kain spawned us?
Human.
Seraphim, Rahab, the antithesis of all we ever believed.
Does it matter? We were lost. He saved us.
Saved us? From what?
From ourselves.
Soul, you have overcome your former vulnerability to water's touch. Immersion in water will no longer dissolve your physical body, enabling you to swim to areas heretofore beyond your reach. Beyond the maelstrom of the abyss, a subterranean tunnel leads northward to the clan territory of your brother Dumas. Endowed with Rahab's soul, you may swim to gain entry where your progress was previously impeded.
Man, like, Rob's a straight up cuck, dude. Like, he's all over Kain like he was Seth the programmer talking about Madara Uchiha or some shit. But yeah, man, seriously. Wow. You know, after seeing Rahab, I always felt like it kind of sucks that we never really got to see what Raziel would have ended up looking like. If he didn't go into the abyss, he probably would have ended up being some kind of like bat creature or something. Probably would have looked pretty cool. So, a lot of people don't know this about me, but my number one fear is underwater creatures. So this fight when I was a kid, when I was playing this, scared the fucking bejesus out of me. I could not stand this fight. I mean, not just that, but the whole Drowned Abbey segment reminds me a lot of the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time, which really sucks because the Water Temple, man, that's one of the worst temples ever. And I know this is kind of random, but how the fuck is Raziel talking without a tongue or a lower jaw? Like, I've really wondered about that. I only bring it up now because it looks like Rahab has some fucked up shit going on with his mouth. So it's almost like, man, how are you guys talking to each other? You know, it really doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, you know, it is what it is. Also, it's kind of fucked up that Kain, you know, basically visited Rahab and then was like, hey, Raziel's on his way, and you're gonna get your ass beat. And he just accepts it. You know, Rahab's just like, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever. I'm at this point, I am legitimately convinced that the rest of these guys, either they were in on it, and they knew that they had to die to make Raziel more powerful. And maybe that's something that Kain told them after they executed him. You know, after they executed Raziel. It's not too far-fetched to think that right after that he could have went back to the Sanctuary of the Clans and be like, hey guys, look, listen up, this is what's going on. We need to destroy the Elder God and basically change our fate, you know, because he didn't know who the Elder God was at that point. Maybe he even took him over the Chronoplast visions and showed him on what was going to happen in the future. But yeah, it does seem like a lot of these lieutenants are just basically suicidal, and it's just weird. And another thing is, I always felt like it was kind of inconsistent for Raziel at this part, because he's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna take your soul. Where the scene right before this, he was talking about how he was spilling his brother's blood and all this and feeling guilt for doing it. And then he gets to his next brother and he's just like, I hate you all, I'm gonna kill you. I mean, if anything, it's cool that this team that made Soul Reaver actually kept the whole idea from Blood Omen of the good guys not really being good guys. So that is a plus, I can say that. But so Raziel, you know, he finally gains the ability to swim pretty much, and he heads off because he has to go fight his brother Dumas. And why does he have to do that? Well, because he has this lust for vengeance that he just cannot get over.
Such a lust for revenge?
I just wanted to throw that part in there. I mean, it really doesn't mean anything to the story, but I'm convinced that what Raziel was looking at right there is the ruins of Nupraptor's retreat. I mean, the skull is almost identical. It even has the little band, If you look at it again, it has a little band on the forehead and everything. I am super convinced that that's gotta be Nutraptor's retreat. Now, why it's so fucked up is anyone's guess. You know, I mean, who knows? Maybe Kain went over there. We already know Kain went there once to kill Nutraptor, but I mean, maybe Kain went back to destroy it. Or maybe it was just over time. You know, I wouldn't be too surprised considering the whole world has been just corrupted. But I just always thought that was really cool. Now, I used to think that, like, Kain's mountain retreat. Are you serious, cops? Fuck it. I'm gonna leave that in the video. But what I was trying to say is I used to want to believe that Kain's mountain retreat was like a refurbished Nutraptor's retreat. But upon closer inspection, it definitely looks like maybe Dumas lives where Nutraptor's retreat used to be. Hell, maybe it was even Dumas. Maybe Dumas was the one who actually took down the skull. I don't understand why they would do that, considering the fact that it had like magical properties, and they were able to see like the corruption of the world and the purity of the world. So it might have been a dumb choice for them to actually take down Nutraptor's retreat. But by this point, Mobius is dead, and they have access to the chronoplast chambers, so maybe it really didn't matter. But this was just a cool little Easter egg for anybody who played Blood Omen, so I am really happy they put it in the game. If anything, I wish we could have gone to more locations from the original Blood Omen and see what they look like now. You know, because we never got to see Vordor's mansion, which I really would have enjoyed, or Dark Eden. That would have been cool too. We do eventually go back to Avernus Cathedral, but that's not in this game. I cannot wait to talk about Soul Reaver 2. It is hands down my favorite game in the entire franchise, and that's probably going to be my longest video. I am super stoked. I can't wait for that shit. But yeah, so I only mention it because we do see Avernus Cathedral again around that time.
The human citadel, its towering walls and deep moats engineered to keep Nosgoth's vampire plague at bay.
Though the city was well fortified against vampires, its human architects hadn't considered a breach by a creature such as myself. This city once teemed with the life of my kind. Could it be that other clans had suffered the same fate as mine? In his madness, could Kain spare none of his brood?
It was not Kain, but Dumas' own arrogance that brought the downfall of his clan. These are human weapons, Raziel. Believing themselves invincible, Dumas and his offspring failed to see an attack coming from the least likely assailants. Complacent in their arrogance, they were taken by surprise, allowing the human vampire hunters to decimate their ranks with little resistance. The few that escaped have been reduced to scavengers.
My brother, Dumas, a powerful warrior in life. He would have burned with shame to have me find him here like a stuck pig.
Unbound at last. I thank you, brother.
Your thanks are premature, Dumas. I have not forgotten whose hands bore me into the abyss.
The centuries in Limbo have honed my strength. Not even Kain is my equal.
Even the strongest vampire is vulnerable.
We shall test your thesis, Raziel.
My bloodthirst has been superseded by an even darker hunger. I will consume your soul before this day is done.
You are persistent, Raziel.
Duma's soul empowers you to wind a constricting band of spectral energy around your enemies. This energy manifests itself in both the spectral and material realms, and in the physical world, it can be employed to manipulate otherwise immovable objects. In the furthermost canyon of Nosgoth's frozen wastes, the hushed silences embrace an ancient enigma. In the bowels of this labyrinth, your master awaits.
Yeah, so damn. Like, Raziel's brutal as fuck. I mean, he made it all the way in there, you know, to save Dumas, to pull him out of his little purgatory state. Dumas like, hey, thank you, and then Raziel's just like, no, fuck, I give zero fucks. I'm about to kill you. I'm gonna kill you, fam. Like, I don't care what you want. I don't care about you. Hold your thanks, cause I'm gonna kill you. And then he just incinerates the motherfucker. Like, damn. Come on, Raziel. Like, you're seriously starting to look like the bad guy here. But I do enjoy this level. I like the whole castle, like, aesthetics that it has here. And Dumas dressed in like this cool ass armor. It doesn't really look like he's changed all that much. I mean, he has changed, but he's not some weird, grotesque water monster or some giant slug like the rest of them. So, I mean, if anything, Dumas kind of got lucky, you know. I would like to see him actually fight Kain. He would probably be fodder. That's my guess. My guess is Dumas would be fodder. There's no way that he'd be able to survive fighting Kain. But it would still be cool. Another thing is, like, I wonder what would have happened if Raziel was never executed. Or if when he came back, he wasn't so hell-bent on getting revenge. I really would like to see how the story would have progressed that way. So, we're pretty much done. There's just a little bit left in the story. And that's going to be the final confrontation between Raziel and Kain. But before he gets there, there is one more interesting thing to talk about. And that's going to be that on the way there to get to Kain, he has to go through Morbius's cave and the facility that's been hidden underneath the cave. And this is also where Raziel finds Mobius's chronoplast chamber that I've been talking about for pretty much the whole video. He goes through and he sees a few visions. We're not going to go through those visions. They're not really important for the storyline. The only reason I'm even mentioning it is because I'm just trying to explain how Kain could have known all this shit was going to happen. And most likely, the most logical answer is that he found the chronoplast chambers and just basically saw a whole bunch of visions of the future. Now, I will show you one clip from the chronoplast visions, just so you guys can see what it is that I'm talking about. And I don't know if the visions change depending on who's actually looking into it, but if they don't, then this little segment that you're about to see will clear up a lot of answers for you. I mean, what it is basically Raziel's revival after being executed. And you might be thinking, well, how did Kain know that blue demon-looking thing was Raziel? Well, he had his sigil across his chest. That's all that Kain would have needed to see to know that that's actually Raziel, is the sigil right there across his scarf-looking thing that he throws over his face. So let's take a look at that.
Where Kain's first fateful meeting with Mobius occurred. Mobius played the role of a doddering soothsayer, stirring his pot of visions while dispensing enigmatic predictions to gullible visitors. Underneath the facade was Mobius the Time Streamer, sorcerer of the Circle of Nine, a ruthless manipulator with the power to bend time. Since his murder at Kain's hands centuries ago, these caves have stood vacant, though, like Mobius himself, they are rumored to be only a facade for a much larger, more elaborate complex. I sensed that Kain was here, and at that moment, I would have plumbed the depths of hell to find him. This, I deduced,
must be the man himself, the time streamer, Mobius. He seemed not at all the impressive figure I had imagined from Kain's boasted exploits. And yet, even this cold image radiated a certain undeniable power. My arrival in this miserable age. What trickery is this?
It is no illusion, Raziel, but a glimpse into the currents of time itself.
So you can easily see how Kain would have known as much as he did just by that one vision alone. I've always felt that this is the part of the series where Raziel really starts to question more and really starts to see that, okay, maybe there really is more that meets the eye that's going on here. Maybe something else really is going on here, and maybe, I should really try to figure out exactly what the deal is. Because after this, he starts looking, into the past of Nosgoth. He looks for, like, the murals and all that shit, and all of a sudden he becomes obsessed with trying to figure out the truth. So, with that being said, we basically get to the final cutscene. Now, for a while, I was thinking about putting what was in Soul Reaver 2 into this, because there's an intro part in Soul Reaver 2 that shows this entire fight, except it's done way better. Obviously better graphics and all that shit. But I decided to keep like the integrity of this. I decided I would just put in the original version, and then when we get to the Soul Reaver 2 video, I'll just go ahead and show you guys like the remake cinematic. But for now, we're gonna stick to the OG version of this fight, and let's watch that.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner. Tell me, did it trouble you to murder your brothers?
Did it trouble you when you ordered me into the abyss?
No. I had faith in you. In your ability to hate. In your self-righteous indignation.
Lies. You cannot have foreseen all of this.
Eternity is relentless, Raziel. When I first stole into this chamber centuries ago, I did not fathom the true power of knowledge. To know the future, Raziel. To see its paths and streams tracing out into the infinite. As a man, I could never have contained such forbidden truths. But each of us is so much more than we once were. Gazing out across the plains of possibility, do you not feel with all your soul how we have become like gods? And as such, are we not indivisible? As long as a single one of us stands, we are legion. And that is why, when I must sacrifice my children to the void, I can do so with a clear heart.
Very poetic, Kain. But in the end, you offer no more than a convenient rationalization for your crimes.
These chambers offer insight for those patient enough to look. In your haste to find me, perhaps you have not gazed deeply enough. Our futures are predestined. Mobius foretold mine a millennium ago. We each play out the parts fate has written for us. We are compelled ineluctably down preordained paths. Free will is an illusion.
I have been to the tomb of Seraphan, Kain. Your dirty secret is exposed. How could you transform a Seraphan priest into a vampire?
How could I not? One must keep his friends close, Raziel, and his enemies even closer. Can you grasp the absurd beauty of the paradox? We're the same. Seraphan and vampire. With our holy wars, our obsession with Nosgoth's domination, who better to serve me than those whose passion transcends all notions of good and evil?
I will not applaud your clever blasphemy. The Seraphan were saviors, defending Nosgoth from the corruption that we represent. My eyes are opened, Kain. I find no nobility in the unlife you rudely forced on my unwilling corpse.
You may have uncovered your past, but you know nothing of it. You think the Seraphan were noble, altruistic? Don't be simple. Their agenda was the same as ours.
You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, Kain. These apparitions and portents. What game are you playing now?
Destiny is a game, is it not? And now, you await my latest move. But this is not where or how it ends. Fate promises more twists before this drama unfolds completely.
Be warned, Raziel. Once you cross this threshold, you are beyond my influence.
Raziel, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah, welcome, time-spanned soul. Welcome to your destiny. Where time is but a loop, a loose stitch in the universal cloth. A streamer might seize upon a chance, a fatal slip, and plunge the fate of planets into chaos.
Man, I remember the first time I got to that to be continued part. The first time I played this game, man, I was like, no. I was straight yelling at the TV. Like, dude, come on, don't do this shit to me. But, you know, it is what it is. And the whole reason why it's even like that is because they just straight up ran out of time. You know, there was no way for them to finish the game the way that they wanted to. And unfortunately, the whole lawsuit that we talked about earlier just kind of fucked over the whole process. But it's cool. It definitely is cool. Because we got a way better game later because of it. One thing I want to mention is like the whole callback to Kain and Vordor's conversation in Blood Omen, where Kain is sitting there saying, "Are we not like gods?" Because it was Vordor that told him that. He was pretty much quoting Vordor, so I like that. There's a lot of callbacks in this whole game, not just the ending, but in the whole game. There's a lot of callbacks to Blood Omen, which I really appreciate, especially considering it was pretty much a different team that made this game. Sure, you know, Amy Hennig was still there, and so she kind of, you know, inherited the series, I guess you would call it. But I do enjoy those callbacks. Like the title card at the end, right before the to be continued part, that is It's such a Blood Omen thing. The only thing that would have made it more like Blood Omen is if they colored it red, like the title cards in the original Blood Omen. But this game, I mean, it's a good game. The story is cool. It's a little slow sometimes, and there are parts that I just really did not get into. But it is a good game. It is a good game overall. It's kind of frustrating with some of the gameplay elements, but like I was saying, you know, we're all here for the story. So with that being said, guys, we are going to wrap up the storyline section of this video, and now I'm going to get into my theory section of the video. I don't have as many as I did last time, but I do hope that you guys find at least a couple of these, if nothing else, entertaining. And so yeah, thanks if you're still here. Thanks for sticking with me, and let's get started with the theories. Okay, so theories, here we go. My first theory, and this one is kind of a stupid theory, I can admit that, but my first theory is this: Raziel, his dark gift was not the wings. The wings was part of his evolution, yes, but the theory here is Raziel's real dark gift was telepathy. And why do I say that? Because as I've pointed out earlier, he has no lower jaw, and he has no tongue, so he really should not be able to communicate with anybody, unless he was basically speaking to them in their minds, which really isn't that far-fetched if you think about it, considering the fact that other vampires have basically gotten the gift before of telepathy. So it very well could be that what's really going on here is that Raziel possesses some kind of telepathic ability that we were just never told. I mean, think about it, guys. It really would make a hell of a lot of sense if that is what was going on. Now, I'm not stupid. I know that it was probably just a choice that the developers made to make him look cool, so I accept that. But you know, the way that my mind works is I like to at least try to find a logical reason for things in these games, and I could be way off, but I don't know. That's just personally my own headcanon, which makes it make more sense to me. Now, the next one is way more complicated, so please forgive me, guys. I'm gonna need you guys to give me a minute of your time to properly explain this. And before we get into it, I want to say the reason I'm putting it in the Soul Reaver video and not the Blood Omen video is because it involves the Soul Reaver itself. And do you guys remember in Blood Omen how there was tokens, and you had to get the tokens to actually purify whichever pillar it was you were trying to purify? So this theory is that Kain, his token is the Soul Reaver. So Blood Omen 1, it introduces the tokens of power in relation to the pillars of Nosgoth. Each pillar gives its guardian with a token, and it provides them power. The token, it could be some kind of tool, it could be a body part of the guardians. According to the developers, the token of balance is the soul of its guardian. Currently that token is the soul of Kain. Where things get complicated though is that Kain's soul is not just inside of him. When Kain created his 6 lieutenants, the only way he could do that, the only way that he can make a new vampire race, is he had to split off parts of his own soul and bound it to them. And it was like a loose recreation of the ritual that Mortanius used to turn him into a vampire. His lieutenants, they basically have a part of Kain's soul, right? All of them do. And these souls, they get fused to them, and then every time that they make a fledgling themselves, a little piece of Kain's soul is divided again. So basically all the vampires in this age have a piece of Kain's soul, Well, because Kain and the pillars were corrupted, because remember, they're all symbiotically bound. So that means that every single vampire is corrupted because they all have a piece of Kain's soul. And not only corrupted, right? But for the purposes of this theory, then that would in turn make the entire vampire race the token of the Pillar of Balance. So what does it have to do with the Soul Reaver? So at the end of the game, at the end of Defiance, Raziel sacrifices himself. They call back all the past Pillar Guardians and fuse them into the Soul Reaver for like a final baptism of the Soul Reaver. All the other vampires at this point are dead, and they've been absorbed into the Soul Reaver. So when that happens, when Raziel sacrifices himself, it effectively gives Kain all the pieces of his soul that he lost back, which makes it one again, whereas before it was spread out through all the vampires. So that's why I think that his token is literally the Soul Reaver. Okay, so the next one, there's kind of two parts to this one, so I'm just going to explain them both. So first of all, you know how the other lieutenants, how they all devolved? Well, the reason that happens and the way that it happens is the ones who were born first got bigger parts of Kain's soul. So they were more resistant to their bodies breaking down over the ages, which we see because the ones that were born first are way less devolved than the other ones. Because didn't you find it weird that Kain never really devolved like the other ones? So one possibility to that is he had the biggest portion of his soul, and that's why he was able to not devolve the way the other vampires did. Now the second part to this theory is that the reason why Kain looks exactly the same as we see him in the intro as he is in his first appearance 1,000 years later is because right after he executed Raziel, he went to the Chronoplast chamber and traveled forward in time to meet Raziel in the future, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. You know, I mean, right after that, right after the end of the game, Kain goes into the Chronoplast chamber again, right, and he travels into the past to show Raziel how the pillars went from being purified to becoming corrupted. So he's obviously already planned all this shit. He's obviously already planned taking Raziel basically on an adventure to go see why they need to stop the Elder God. And it would also make sense as to why Kain is so hostile to Raziel, because he's trying to give him the motivation to continue to follow him. Because I mean, if Raziel isn't motivated to follow him, then there's no way that Kain can use him to his purposes, right? So all of this was orchestrated by Kain to get Raziel to follow him so that they can do what they need to do to try to change their fate. I mean, we can't forget that Kain has access to all of Mobius's technology. For all we know, Kain has already tried to change their fate multiple times and has failed multiple times. It's very, very possible that Kain has literally been traveling back and forth through time trying to find a way to fix things for thousands of years. We don't even know. So that's that theory. Here's the next one. The next one is that the Hilden are vampires. You know how we keep seeing all of these paintings everywhere that has pictures of a race that looks like Raziel, and it's been prophesized that Raziel is basically about to be the Hilden's savior or their messiah. So I'm wondering, okay, so hear me out, because I know this might sound like it's not even possible, but the ancient vampires, they worshipped the wheel, right? They worshipped the Elder God and the whole cycle of rebirth and death, right? So maybe what's going on with the Hilden is these are vampires that refuse to go back to the wheel, and then they come back. Because that was a huge topic when we were talking about the war between the Hilden and the vampires. And for anyone who's seen my timeline video, this is the section why I felt like I needed to make that video. Alright, because there was the Hilden War that I explained in the other video. And in that war, it was basically a religious war. Like, the Hilden did not want to worship the wheel, and the vampires did. And so that's why I think, like, they're basically zombie vampires, I guess you could call them. Maybe they're more Wraith-like now. And you might be wondering, hey, so what kind of evidence do you have to support that? Well, the answer is Raziel. You know, Raziel was predicted to be their messiah, their savior. And Raziel looks just like them. So maybe that's what happened to the Hilden too. And that's why the Hilden look the way that they look. And that's why Raziel is their champion. Is because he is a vampire who died, who did not go to the wheel. Hence why he looks the way that he does. Still not convinced? That's okay. Because here is what I think is the telltale sign that this might actually be true. In Defiance, there's a part where Raziel is looking at a mural. And when he's looking at it, the Elder God literally says to him, "It is to the Hilden race that you belong." But what's weird about that is Raziel was a human. He was a human before he became a vampire. He wasn't a Hilden. So why would the Elder God say that he is a Hilden if he was a human and then a vampire, and that was it? Well, if what I'm saying is true, if when a vampire dies they refuse to go to the wheel and they come back, then it would make sense why the Elder God said that Raziel belongs to the Hilden, because it was the Hilden who started that tradition of refusing to go to the wheel and coming back to life. Alright, so the next one is, can the pillars move? And I know that sounds crazy as fuck, but if you look at all the different games and you look at the surroundings when you're at the pillars, pretty much only Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are consistent. Because there's different scapes, there's different landscapes for the pillars in Blood Omen 2 and in Blood Omen 1. Now, granted, you could probably just say that it was nature, but like I was saying earlier in this video, the Elder God can't really move. He's in the Pillars Grotto in Soul Reaver 2, but he's not there in Soul Reaver 1. So, is it possible that the pillars can be moved? And if so, where did they get moved to? Well, I would be willing to say that they got moved towards Kain's mountain retreat, which is why you end up going past Nutraptor's retreat on your way to meet Kain at the Oracle Cave. Because if you think about it that way, then if you look at the map of Blood Omen 1, then Raziel should have been pretty far away from those areas, but it doesn't walk very far. So very well could be that the pillars were moved somehow. I don't know, maybe some ancient race like the Sheikah. I'm fucking with you. No, but seriously, maybe they found out a way to actually move the pillars. Who knows? Alright guys, so that's all I really have for you right now in terms of theories. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out this video. I just want to thank anybody who's been watching these, and also please like and subscribe. It really would mean a lot to me. These videos are really hard to make. They take me a really long time to do it, especially because I work a full-time job, so I'm pretty much, it kind of feels like I'm doing 2 jobs at once right now, which is fine because I love this series. And if you don't want to subscribe, it's all good, but it really would be fucking awesome if you guys could do that for me. So anyways, thank you all for your time. Next video is going to be on Soul Reaver 2. Might take me about maybe a month, hoping to make it a little bit less than that. But like I said, it does take a long time to make these. So with that being said, everybody, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you guys again soon for the next episode of the Legacy of Kain Retrospective.